confused woman called the sheriff's office and reported that her husband had come home twice. Research Unit, Case File 005. Agents Mercer and Jones deployed. Hollow Creek, Vermont. Population 218. The town sits at the bottom of a long valley, hemmed in by low wooded hills on every side. One road in, one road out. The kind of place where the streetlights end about a quarter mile past the last house, and the only reason anyone passes through is because they took a wrong turn off the state highway. For most of the year, nothing happens in Hollow Creek. The general store opens at 7. The diner closes at 8. The sheriff, a man named Art Caldwell, has held the same office for 19 years, without a single homicide on the books. That changed 11 days ago. The first report came from a woman named Ellen Marsh. She called the sheriff's office just after 2 in the morning and said her husband had come home twice. Once at 11, the way he always did. Dinner warmed up, boots by the door, and then again at 1:45, walking in through the same door. She said the second one looked exactly like him. Same jacket, same voice. She said she locked herself in the bathroom with the phone. Caldwell drove out to the Marsh house within 10 minutes. He found Ellen Marsh in the bathroom, still on the line. He found her husband asleep in bed, exactly where she had left him. No sign of forced entry, no second man. Caldwell wrote it up as a stress episode and went home. 3 nights later, a man named Walter Hoyt called the same office and reported that he had seen his own daughter standing at the end of his driveway. His daughter had died in 2019. Then the sightings started coming in faster. A boy who came home from school and sat at the kitchen table and wouldn't speak, and whose mother eventually realized was not her son. A farmer who watched himself walk across his own field at dusk. A woman at the diner who served coffee to her neighbor twice in the same hour, 10 minutes apart, and swore on both occasions it was him. 2 days ago, Sheriff Caldwell stopped returning calls. His deputy found his cruiser parked outside the station with the engine still running. Caldwell was not inside. Agents Daniel Mercer and Lana Jones arrived in Hollow Creek just after 4 in the afternoon. The light in the valley was already starting to fade. The hills on either side of the road blocked most of the sun, and the town sat in a kind of early blue dusk, even though sunset was still 2 hours off. Mercer slowed the vehicle as they passed the town sign. Jones looked out the passenger window. "Not a lot of foot traffic," she said. Mercer glanced toward the diner. There were lights on inside, but no one visible through the windows. Half the houses they passed had their curtains drawn. The pickup trucks parked along the main street looked like they hadn't moved in days. Leaves had collected under the tires. They pulled up outside the sheriff's station. The cruiser Caldwell had abandoned was still parked out front. Someone had finally turned the engine off, but nobody had moved it. Jones opened the file on her tablet. 5 witness reports in the last 11 days, she said, plus the sheriff. Mercer stared at the cruiser. They all described the same thing? Jones scrolled. Close enough. People seeing other people. Doubles. Someone they know walking around as someone else. One of them saw themselves. Mercer nodded slowly. Any physical evidence? No tracks, Jones said. No forced entry. No injuries on the ones who reported it. She paused. The sheriff's the only one who's gone missing. Mercer opened the door and stepped out. The air in the valley was still. Not quiet the way the ridge had been still quiet. Not like the silence in Clay Ridge 6 weeks ago. Different. The town had the sounds it was supposed to have. A generator somewhere. A dog barking 2 streets over. wind moving through the maples at the edge of the road. But something about the rhythm was wrong. Jones stepped out beside him. She noticed it too. He could see it in the way she tilted her head. "What is it?" she said. Mercer listened for another moment. "The dog," he said. Jones frowned. "What about it?" "It hasn't changed pitch." The dog had been barking since they pulled up. Same tone, same interval, not responding to anything, just barking. Jones looked down the street in the direction of the sound. "That's not a dog," she said. Mercer didn't answer. They walked into the sheriff's station. The deputy was a woman in her late 20s named Harper. She looked like she hadn't slept in 2 days. She stood up when they came in and introduced herself too quickly, the way people do when they've been waiting a long time for someone else to take over. Mercer asked her to walk them through the last conversation she'd had with Caldwell. Harper sat back down slowly. "He called me around 11 the night before last," she said. "Said he was driving out to the Marsh house again. Second time that week. He said Ellen had called again." Jones made a note. "Did she?" Harper shook her head. "That's the thing. I checked the log. Ellen Marsh didn't call that night. Nobody did." Mercer leaned against the edge of the desk. "So? Somebody called him." "Or something," Harper said. Jones looked up. "Did he say anything about the voice?" Harper swallowed. "He said it sounded like Ellen. He said she was crying. He said she was asking him to hurry." Mercer nodded slowly. And then he drove out there," Harper said, "and he didn't come back." She pointed at a small monitor on the far wall, a grainy black and white feed from a camera mounted above the station door. "He pulled into the lot at 12:40. I watched it on the feed the next morning. He sat in the cruiser for about 6 minutes. Then he got out and he walked out of frame." Jones frowned. "Walked where?" Harper hesitated. "That's the part I keep watching." She turned the monitor so they could see it better. She queued up the footage. On the screen, the cruiser pulled in, the headlights cut off. Caldwell sat inside for 6 minutes, just as Harper had said. Then the driver's door opened. Caldwell stepped out. He stood beside the cruiser for a moment, and then he turned, not toward the station door, but toward the street, and he started walking. Mercer watched the footage carefully. "Was anyone out there?" Harper shook her head. "Nobody on the feed. Nothing on the street. He just walked off down the road." Jones leaned closer to the monitor. "What's he looking at?" Harper paused the video. On the screen, Caldwell's face was turned slightly to the right, his expression caught mid-step. "He was smiling," Harper said quietly. "He never smiled on duty." Mercer studied the frozen image for a long moment. Then he said, "We're going to need to talk to Ellen Marsh." The Marsh house sat at the end of a gravel road about a mile outside the main street. It was the last house before the tree line. Mercer parked at the foot of the drive. Neither of them got out right away. Jones looked up at the house. Lights on in the kitchen, curtains drawn. Mercer studied the porch. One of the rocking chairs was moving slightly in the wind. The other wasn't, even though the wind was steady. He noted it and didn't mention it. They walked up to the door. Ellen Marsh answered before they knocked. She was a woman in her early 50s, thin, with her hair pulled back tight. She looked at them through the screen for a long moment before she spoke. "You're not from here," she said. Mercer held up his credentials. She looked at them without reading them. Then she unlatched the screen. Inside, the house was warm and very clean. A kettle was on the stove. A plate of untouched food sat at the kitchen table. She did not invite them to sit. Jones spoke first. "Mrs. Marsh, We'd like to ask you about the night your husband came home twice. Ellen looked at her for a long time. Then she said, "Which time are you asking about?" Jones paused. "The second one," she said carefully. Ellen nodded slowly. "He came in through the door. Same jacket, same boots." Mercer watched her closely. What was different about him? Ellen's eyes moved toward the kitchen. "His voice," she said. Jones made a note. "How?" Ellen thought for a moment. "He said my name right," she said. Jones looked up. "He said it right." Ellen nodded. "My husband's been calling me Elle for 31 years. Nobody calls me Ellen. Nobody. Not even my mother when she was alive." She looked back at them. "But this one, he said Ellen, like he'd read it somewhere." Mercer nodded slowly. "What did you do?" "I said hello back," she said. And he smiled. And then he asked if dinner was ready, and I told him it was in the oven. And I walked past him into the hall, and I locked myself in the bathroom, and I called Art. Jones glanced toward the hallway. "Where is your husband now?" "Upstairs," Ellen said. "Asleep. He's been asleep a lot lately." Mercer's attention sharpened. "Since when?" Ellen thought about it. "Since the night after. He came home from work the next evening and he said he was tired, and he's been tired ever since." She swallowed. "He still works. He still eats. He still talks. But he sleeps 12 hours a night now. He didn't used to sleep more than 6. Jones looked at Mercer. Mercer looked back at Ellen. "Mrs. Marsh," he said, "has your husband said your name since that night?" Ellen was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "No, he just calls me honey now." Mercer and Jones stepped back outside. The light had started to fail across the valley. The hills on either side had gone from green to gray. A mist was beginning to rise out of the low ground along the tree line. Jones spoke quietly as they walked back to the vehicle. "She thinks her husband's been replaced." Mercer nodded. "She doesn't say it out loud," Jones said, "but she thinks it." "I know," Mercer said. Jones looked back at the house. "Do you think he has been?" Mercer didn't answer immediately. He was watching the tree line beyond the property. The mist was moving between the trunks. Slow, too slow for wind. "I think something in this valley is getting closer to the people who see it," he said. Jones frowned. "What do you mean?" Mercer turned toward the vehicle. "The first witness saw her husband twice, 11 days ago, separate, outside the house and inside." Jones nodded. "Now the one upstairs calls her honey," Mercer said. "Doesn't say her name, sleeps 12 hours a night." Jones looked back toward the house. "You think the second one is still in there?" Mercer opened the driver's door. "I think the first one isn't." They drove back toward the main street as the last of the light faded. The streetlights came on as they reached the edge of town. Half of them flickered. 2 of them didn't come on at all. The diner was still open. Mercer pulled over across the street. Jones followed his gaze. "Only 3 people inside." Mercer nodded. "And the waitress." Through the window, a woman in a green apron was pouring coffee for a man at the counter. The man lifted the cup, drank, set it down. Then the waitress poured him another cup. The man lifted it, drank, set it down. Then the waitress poured him another cup. Jones leaned forward slightly. "How long has that been going on?" Mercer watched for another few seconds. The pattern repeated. Same motion, same pour, same interval. "Long enough," he said. Jones picked up the radio. "We should check." Mercer put a hand on her arm. "No." She looked at him. "Why not?" "Because we're being watched," he said. Jones went very still. Mercer didn't turn his head. He spoke quietly. "Third house down, second window on the upper floor." Jones shifted her gaze slowly, the way Mercer had taught her to, without moving her head. She found the window. There was a figure standing in it. The lights behind it were off. She could only make out the outline. A man, standing very straight, not moving. She couldn't tell if he was facing them. Jones kept her voice level. "How long has he been there?" "Since we pulled up," Mercer said. Jones looked back toward the diner. The waitress poured the coffee again. The man drank it again. Mercer started the engine. "We need to find the sheriff," he said. Jones nodded. "Any idea where to start?" Mercer looked at the figure in the window one more time. Then he looked at the diner. Then he looked at the road leading out of town. He said, "We start with the camera." They went back to the station. Harper was still there. She hadn't eaten. She hadn't moved much. Mercer asked her to play the footage from the night Caldwell disappeared. All of it. Every camera. Harper hesitated. "There's not much," she said. "We only have the one on the front door and one pointed at the road." "Play them both," Mercer said. She did. The first feed showed what she had shown them earlier. The cruiser. The 6 minutes. Caldwell getting out, walking off down the street, smiling. The second feed was aimed down the main road, toward the edge of town. It had caught Caldwell from behind as he walked out of the first frame. He walked for about 40 seconds. Steady pace, not hurried, not slow. Then, near the far edge of the camera's range, he stopped. He stood in the middle of the road, and someone walked up to meet him. The figure came from the direction of the tree line. It was hard to see clearly. The camera was low resolution, and the streetlight at that end of town didn't work. But Mercer could see the shape of it. Man-sized, walking normally. The figure reached Caldwell. They stood facing each other for about 20 seconds. Then they both turned, and they both walked off the edge of the frame, together, in step. Jones spoke first. "Play it again." Harper rewound it. They watched it again. The two figures walked off together. Same pace, same stride, same posture. Jones said quietly, "They're walking the same." Mercer nodded. Harper said, "I didn't notice that before." Mercer asked her to freeze the frame just before they left the shot. She did. On the screen, the two figures were side by side. From behind, at that distance, in that light, they looked identical. Jones stared at the screen. "Which one is Caldwell?" Mercer studied the image for a long time. Then he said, "I don't know." They left the station just after 10. The street was empty. The diner lights were off. The figure in the upstairs window was gone. The only sound in the town was the dog, still barking. Same pitch. Same interval. Jones walked close to Mercer as they crossed to the vehicle. She kept her voice low. "I want to get out of this valley," she said. Mercer unlocked the vehicle. "We will," he said, "but not tonight." Jones looked at him. "Why not?" "Because whatever it is, it's moved on from the Marsh house," he said. "It's got what it wanted there." She waited. "It's got one deputy watching a screen alone at night. It's got a diner where the same man's been drinking the same cup of coffee for who knows how long. It's got a sheriff walking off in step with something that looked just like him." Jones swallowed. And if we leave now," Mercer said, "we take the road out through the tree line, and whatever's been standing in that window is going to be standing on the road." Jones looked back toward the houses, the third one down, the second window on the upper floor. The figure was back. She couldn't tell when it had returned. It was facing them now. She was certain of it. She got in the vehicle. Mercer started the engine. "Where do we go?" she said. Mercer looked at the road, then at the hills, then at the sky. "The station," he said. "We sleep in shifts. We leave at first light." They drove back to the sheriff's office. Harper let them in without a word. She seemed relieved they had come back. Mercer took the first watch. Jones tried to sleep on the small cot in the back room. She didn't really. She lay with her eyes open and listened to the town. Around 2 a.m, she heard footsteps on the porch. She sat up. In the front room, Mercer was already standing. Harper was watching the monitor. The feed showed the front door of the station from outside. Someone was standing on the porch, facing the door, not moving. Jones came into the front room. Mercer held up a hand. She stopped. On the screen, the figure on the porch lifted its arm slowly, and it knocked 3 times. Harper spoke very quietly. "There's nobody supposed to be out there." The figure knocked again, 3 times. Same rhythm. Then a voice came through the door, muffled by the wood but audible. It said, "Harper, it's Art. Open up." Harper stood up. Mercer put a hand on her shoulder. "Don't," he said. Harper looked at him, her eyes wet. "That's him," she said. "That's his voice. I know that's his voice." The voice on the other side of the door said, "Harper, come on. I'm hurt. Open the door." Mercer shook his head slowly. "Listen to the words," he said. Harper shook. "What do you mean?" Mercer said, "He called you Harper." Harper stared at him. "That's my name." "It's your name," Mercer said, "but he doesn't call you that." She was still shaking. "What does he call me?" She looked at the door, then back at Mercer. "Tell me." "Kid," she whispered. "He calls me Kid." On the other side of the door, the voice said, "Harper, please." The rhythm was just slightly wrong, too even, too careful, like someone had practiced the line, like someone had heard the name once and was saying it back. Mercer drew Jones and Harper away from the door into the back office. He closed the interior door behind them. Through the closed door, they could still hear the knocking. 3 knocks. A pause. 3 knocks. Harper sat down on the floor. Jones knelt next to her. Mercer stood by the interior door and listened. The knocking continued for nearly 20 minutes. Then the voice changed. It said, "Harper." The rhythm was different now, tired, strained. The voice said, "Harper, it's me. I got lost. I don't know how I got out here. Please." It sounded exactly like a man who'd been walking for 2 days. It sounded exactly like someone scared. Harper put her hands over her face. Mercer kept his hand flat against the interior door. He didn't move. After another few minutes, the voice stopped. They waited. Half an hour. An hour. Mercer moved back to the front room and checked the monitor. The porch was empty. He checked the second camera, the one pointed down the road. At the far edge of the frame, a figure was walking away, toward the tree line, alone. Jones came up behind him. "Is it gone?" Mercer watched the figure until it stepped off the camera. "For now," he said. They left Hollow Creek at 5:40 in the morning. The sun wasn't up yet, but the sky above the hills had started to turn gray. Harper came with them. She had locked the station behind her. She had left a note on the desk that said, "Gone to get help." She had left her badge on top of it. Mercer drove. Jones sat in the passenger seat. Harper sat in the back with her hands in her lap. No one spoke as they reached the edge of town. The road out ran straight toward the gap in the hills. The tree line on either side was still dark. The mist from the night before still hadn't lifted. Jones watched the trees as they passed. She said quietly, "If anything comes out of those woods." Mercer nodded. I know, he said. Nothing came out of the woods. They reached the top of the rise. The road leveled out. The valley dropped away behind them. Jones let out a long breath. Harper closed her eyes, and then Mercer slowed the vehicle. Jones looked at him. What? Mercer was staring at the rearview mirror. Jones turned in her seat. On the road behind them, at the last bend before the rise, someone was standing in the middle of the road, watching them. Harper leaned forward. Is that? Mercer didn't answer. The figure was too far away to make out clearly, but it was wearing a sheriff's jacket, and it was smiling. Jones said, "Drive." Mercer drove. They didn't stop for 40 miles. Incident logged. Subject designation pending. Entity exhibits vocal mimicry, behavioral replacement, and prolonged integration into host communities. Hollow Creek designated for extended monitoring. Sheriff Arthur Caldwell. Status unresolved. Ellen Marsh. Status unresolved. Deputy Harper. In protective custody. Peru case file. 005 remains unresolved.